Hey guys, welcome to With Intention. This is John Giganti. I'm here at the offices of Studio 88, about to interview my good friend Josh Scott. He does a fantastic job running his marketing company. He's all about empowerment and all about building into his team. I think he does an amazing job as a servant leader. Let's go talk to him.
Because then people are like, well, why can't I set up a time for you? It's going to be 4 months till I can set up a sales call. And it's like, yeah, sorry, we only take on X amount of clients at a time.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Gosh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I wanted to have you on. You'll be our second guest on the interview
Sweet.
portion of With Intention. You run Studio 88, a marketing and branding firm. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you guys do?
Yeah, we work in a kind of a niche space. It's marketing, but it's dental marketing. It's interesting. I mean, my background's in seminary. Like, people are like, where'd you go to school? I went to seminary. Was in that space for over a decade. At the end of it, just got into kind of a tough situation that needed to get out of, and made some hard decisions to just make a kind of a right turn career path. So I actually landed, that's where I kind of fell into dentistry. Family friends owned a, what we call a practice management firm, and hired me, said, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. Started running the continuing education events, became the marketing director, loved it, and at the end, yeah, just was, I mean, there's a big story there, but it's, eventually launched out into this and thought we could do something significant in this space.
So one of the things I'm really intrigued by in our conversations is how you build culture with your team.
We're working in a creative space, so managing, leading creatives is like a whole thing in itself. But a lot of our team are millennials as well, and definitely the vibe out there in corporate culture right now is millennials are hard to lead. But so putting millennials and creatives together and managing that can be a little complex. And so, we're a very independent culture. We are here together in our space one day a week, some Mondays. And the rest of the week they can kind of work wherever, whenever. However, we have this whole, from very first interview, we tell them, I am not a babysitter. Okay. So if I have to be following up and finding out are you working, are you meeting deadlines, then this whole thing will not work. We probably assume trust at the start. Yeah. Which might be a little naive, and at some point probably will absolutely come back to bite us, with a future employee or something. But I think we're probably just going to live and operate like that. If you get through the interview process and we feel like you're a good fit, then we're going to trust you to do what you say you can do. And then the relationship, obviously, as it grows, supports that.
You wrote an article recently called With Intention, and you shot a video on it, which I think is great, and we'll post that too. I think it's outstanding. But you talk about this area in the middle of With Intention, but you have one area of boredom and on one polar end, and then the other area of chaos.
Yeah. You were kind of inspiring with your show With Intention, and I wanted to write an article about it because I don't know that there's enough people talking about this, especially when you get into high-level jobs and business ownership and things like that. I was thinking about this concept with intention and what does that look like for me? And honestly, for me, success has been a very kind of elegant space. And on one end of the spectrum is boredom. Just don't have enough to do. I mean, when we first started this company, probably lived over there more. And so I just had to be way more intentional about my time because you're just trying to build something. Sure. On the other end, chaos. And I know you've swung over there too, where I tend to get overwhelmed. And so for me, it's this very elegant space where it's perfect, where I feel like I'm living with intention. I've got enough free space to process and think creatively, but I've also got enough to keep me busy and kind of keep that adrenaline going just a bit, so where things are exciting and fun. And so it became about how do I stay in that space?
Sure. So how do you do it?
Yeah. So that's the that's the ticket, right? I like to ask kind of big picture questions. What if you just assumed abundance in your life? What does that look like? And what that does is it takes that whole money question off the out of the equation. If money's not an issue, what would you do? How would you live? What does this week look like if money's not an issue? Because then I'm well, would I have packed 9 sales calls in on a Friday in the summer when it's 80 degrees outside and my kids are at the pool? It makes you live with your why. Because then when people are well, why can't I set up a time for you? It's going to be 4 months till I can set up a sales call. And it's yeah, sorry, we only take on X amount of clients at a time, and right now we're booked. And so would love to work with you, but this is how we function.
Yeah. It sounds like you think about margin quite a bit.
Yeah.
Or space quite a bit.
Yeah, I do. And this is the space I'm getting better at, the place I'm getting better at, I need to get better at. Because right now what's hard is like, I'll give you probably a fail on my end last week was I had Friday afternoon blocked. I think at first it was like noon on, and then it was like 2 o'clock on, and then it ended up being 9 phone calls on Friday and ending at 4:30.
Yeah.
So and so didn't have anything in that space. That was like my space, right? Like worked hard all week and end at like noon on Friday. It's the summer. Who knows what I might do? Might go for a run, might read, might whatever. I've got 2 canvases at my house I keep trying to get to paint.
Oh, okay, cool.
I've got these ideas in my head, and they're actually sitting out. I actually put the base coat of paint on them. They're sitting there. So there's these things, right?
Okay.
But what happened was I'm leaving for vacation in 2 weeks, and the phone call requests were piling up, and I unblocked that time and put in probably 4 phone calls that I hadn't intended. So it's yes, blocking the space, but it's probably the discipline, to let it go. Dude, I don't know, space is really hard for me because when it is on a calendar, I'm like, I don't have anything on Friday afternoon. It probably feels like boredom.
Yeah.
And then I get this like temptation of like, well, I'm not doing anything anyway.
Yeah.
So why don't I take three sales calls? Chances are on our close rate, one of those becomes a client.
Sure.
But putting those blocks in my calendar, I'm better with workout blocks. Put an hour here, hour there. But I probably, if I'm honest, on a week, I need a half a day, a week, where there's just nothing planned, and I can write, I can read, I can, be creative, process.
How do you get yourself back if you're stuck on the outsides?
In the micro moments, it's get out for a workout.
Okay.
Like go out for a run.
Love
just
that.
Just sweat it out. Just like there's something about that just forces your mindset to change.
Yeah.
Macro, it's probably looking at it and going like, why am I over there? And there's been some cases in the last year or so where business demands have escalated, and I don't know that I see a solution in the future. So I've got to figure out some things, Dude, I'll tell you, the thing that's probably changed my life the most in the last 2 months, an online app called Schedule Once.
Okay.
I put my schedule in there. I set up my times throughout the week, block certain times and whatever. And then so when somebody says, hey, I want to talk to you, I'm like, great, here's a link to my schedule. It has all my availability. Pick whatever works best for you.
Okay.
And it just took all that back and forth out of it. So there were things like that, like phone calls are escalating. I can't deal with them the same way, or I'm just going to continually feel overwhelmed. So something like that comes along, a tool needs to be in place, or another team member needs to come on board, or a change has to happen.
Yeah. How do you get your team to work together in a kind of that creative flow state or that focus state?
Yeah.
I imagine you guys have had to have gotten there and get there often just to be able to produce the content you do.
Yeah. No, that's interesting you asked that, because we were talking about that a little bit this morning. I am I like to systematize everything. Okay. So even our creative process, it's almost like a production system that happens. Walt Disney, he made some type of quote about how magic happens in the system. Magic happens intentionally when you plan it, and how you can go to Disney and it's like this magical place, but man, there's so much happening that they're they don't want it to be the typical dirty amusement park theme park. So how do they do that? Well, there's a trash can every 12 feet.
Right.
And so I think there's room for magic.
Yeah.
So when we get done with a website, hopefully the client is like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, and it feels like magic. But there was a very predictable process.
Sure.
I think what that does is it takes that off of the creatives and hopefully just allows them to go here's the space, be creative.
Yeah.
You do that part and it moves on. And by the time we get done, it's a very predictable, magical process.
Yeah. So I've heard, I got to hear General Stanley McChrystal talk about a month ago at a conference, and he talked about the job as a leader is to make the soil fertile for your team, right? So that's your job. Sometimes you gotta water it, or sometimes you gotta let the sun hit it, or sometimes you gotta plant seeds, all that. So that struck a chord with me that, you probably have to balance that with the team. When you let them just go creative, when you follow the process. I don't know if that resonates at all.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think when you've got maybe predictability, then it's you can go off course. Like I know this is out of the box, but we could do something like this. For me, I think it's like having to figure out less than actually frees you up to think in different creative ways.
So you have kind of your core stuff down, and that frees you up for when other things happen. So good. Awesome, man. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Man, I thought it was great. Josh talked about living with intention. He talked about boredom on one end, chaos on the other, and trying to find that happy medium in between. But here's the thing I want you to take away. You're not always going to be right there in that sweet spot. You may be on one end or the other, but I think the key is that awareness to get yourself back there. So think about that. Don't be so hard on yourself. Thank you so much for watching. It means so much to have you here watching. And you can always, if you want to connect, feel free to check me out on Instagram at Jon Giganti. It's Jon Giganti, Giganti. I know that can be a little bit of a tongue twister. So thanks again for watching, and we'll talk soon.